Maralinga in South Australia is synonymous with the explosion of atomic bombs, but there is another side to the place. This is a collection of photographs and video taken in 1997 as I journeyed from the Trans-Australian Railway line 300 kilometres northwards to Emu. The starting point is on the railway line at Uldea. It was at Uldea that Daisy Bates lived for many years. Her mission was to help the local Aborigines. This memorial was erected to commemorate her work. Mrs. Daisy Bates devoted her life here and elsewhere to the welfare of Australian Aborigines. A little further westwards is another memorial to commemorate the meeting point of the two gangs of workers as they built the railway line. As the railway comes from the east out of this curve, it enters the longest straight section of line in the world. The next point of interest is the stop at Watson. This was the staging post for equipment and personnel involved in the bomb tests. In those days, there were 6 cottages at the halt, but they have long since been removed. Right by the Watson halt is a quarry where fossils of sea creatures can be unearthed after 43 million years. I was at Watson one day to meet somebody arriving by train, and I witnessed 2 trains passing. The Indian Pacific passenger train pulled into a siding to allow a freight train to pass, and then it could pull back onto the main line to continue its journey to Perth across the Nullarbor. There is a good sealed road from Watson northwards to the Maralinga village and beyond to the test area. On the right-hand side, just before the road reaches the sand hills, is the entrance to one of the many caves in this area. Just after entering the Maralinga area is a clearing on the left-hand side of the road. I understand that servicemen from the test era enjoyed many parties at this site. That was long ago, and all I could do was inspect the remains. Evidence of the parties was found just across the road, where hundreds of beer bottles had been dumped but have now been cleared away. Eventually, the road comes to a T-junction with the much photographed sign pointing to the Maralinga village. Since everybody has their photo taken at this sign, I did the same. This is an aerial photo of the village with the airfield in the distance. Few of the original buildings remain, but the old hospital building is still there. I slept in that building many times during the partial clean-up in the 1990s. On one occasion, I woke to find the village shrouded in mist. It was almost a surreal experience to walk around in the misty atmosphere. The road to the right leads to the airfield with its 2.4 kilometre long runway, and then on to what was known as the forward area where the bombs were tested. Continuing along the straight road northwards towards the forward area was a signpost which might now have been removed. I don't know who named it as my post, but I thank them and show my appreciation with this photograph. Alongside the road are several markers left by the South Australian surveyor Len Bedell, from when he discovered the site and then laid out the road. In the late 1870s, a man called Tietkens hoped to raise sheep on this range. He had a hut at this point and dug a well near here, hoping to find fresh water. Since he was not successful with his first well, Tietkens moved further east and dug a deeper well, but with the same disappointing result. Further north are these devices which I am inspecting. I believe they were used to launch rockets around the atomic explosions to make smoke trails shown in this clip. One of the atomic bombs was exploded on the ground. This test, codenamed Marku, left a deep crater with a lip. Into that crater, the British dumped the remains of several aircraft and site buildings. They then covered the crater and a plinth was placed at the site. At another of the test sites, you might see this lovely green glazing. This results from the atomic fireball hitting the ground and melting the sandy surface. This glazing is radioactive. You might also see these signs placed at intervals of 50 meters. Most of the land enclosed by these markers is still contaminated with plutonium. You might also venture onto this site, which was codenamed Tufi. It was to have been the location for the next atomic explosion, but was never used. Continuing northwards is a track which in those days was known as Fifth Avenue, denoting that it was 5 miles north of the site codenamed Taranaki, where several explosions occurred. Along this track are several relics from the test era, and some of the tracks cut 60 years ago are still visible, but passage can be difficult. Apart from the remnants of the test era, Maralinga has a lot more to offer. You can experience a wonderful sunrise or glorious sunsets. And once I stood at the Taranaki site and watched a thunderstorm develop all around me. One of the interests is the wide variety of native flora to be enjoyed. I don't know the names of any of these plants, except of course Sturt's desert pea. And I do recognize the circles of spinifex. I have also been privileged to visit a couple of rock holes. This is the Pilling rock hole, which was dry when I first visited, but was full of water on another occasion. I also saw another rock hole further west, and that was well watered. A few times I travelled northwards, either by air or road, to Emu, where 2 more atomic bombs were exploded. Halfway between Maralinga and Emu is this sign left by Len Biddell. The sign was placed by the Gunbarrow Road Construction Party on the 28th of August 1956. And on one occasion we went further west across a claypan and came across a site known as Stonehenge. And finally, this is Emu, with the 2 test sites, Totem 1 and Totem 2. There was a temporary camp at Emu, and the remains are still evident. There is more glazing at Emu, but this time it's black, and as before, it is radioactive.